Okay, folks, I'm your host, Rob Potter, on the Victor the Light, whatever podcast or informational channel. This is Tony Rodrigues, and we met in Maui. Why don't you introduce yourself real quickly?
Rob, you were one of the first people to help me out after I got all my memories back,
Mhm.
being my abduction and the things that happened to me. You were one of the first people that came by and just checked, gave me the crazy check, make sure I was okay. And we've been on and off and ran into each other plenty of times since. And so
Yeah,
since then, I consult people. I got my book out, working on my second book, and have done kind of the circuit in the truther community. And I feel like everybody should know everybody, but that's really not the case. It seems like there's a lot of people it's a big community. And so a lot of people know me and a lot of people still don't know my story, which is fine.
so that's a little preview, folks. We're going to go into a little more detail on some of that stuff there, and so I just wanted to mention this is I'm starting a new series of interviews and podcasts, obviously to reach out to my friends and to also promote my conference on the promiserevealed.net. And it's coming up pretty soon. And one of these years we'll get Tony out there. He came out when Corey Good did his first talk with Michael Sala, Laura Eisenhower, and myself. And that's when he was in the audience, and I asked him if he wanted to come out. And I literally shined the spotlight on him, and people kind of just saw that. I think obviously Mr. C wasn't too happy or thrilled about that, but anyway, so I wanted to go into, since we haven't seen each other a long time, uh, we have talked on the phone and I think we've done some shows together and stuff, but I thought I would check in and see, you had told me I'd heard his story, folks, in Hawaii, and I definitely believed it. And, he was kind of like I feel sometimes the Rodney Dangerfield of the secret space program. I don't get no respect. I mean, I have a
Yeah.
lot of experience. So, um, uh, and it seems to be the way his memories came and him driving up there, and as he evolved in his experience and his memory retains, um, I was happy. And then Mr. C and Elena took a little acknowledgement of your information, and so I'm really happy that you've been vindicated to a certain extent. So going forward now, um, maybe you can share. Let's share it first. I thought I would ask you, why don't you share if you've had any more memories or if you want to go over that? For those of you who don't know him, folks, I'll give a real quick rundown on the front so we can get to the meat. So Tony was chosen for a 20 and back and kind of um, a revenge style thing from elite. And Tony was taken up and had various positions for them, being somewhat of a sensitive. Um, he was running drugs. He was working in a crazy house in Canada, and he verified a lot of that. We don't have to go into that, but um, and then he was off world, and so his experiences on series are have been validated, I believe, for sure. And I think that I hope that the situation, if there's changing, it's not so good. And all you have to do, I'm sure you folks already know Tony, so I just wanted to give that brief part. And since he's been talking about it since 2015, we met, and I think, yeah, you really blasted off about what 2.5 years ago. There was a lot more interest, and I'm really glad that your story is getting out. So, okay, so that's Tony now, and you can add anything to that, and tell us what's new, anything, memories you returned, and then we can go into the philosophical aspect of where we're at.
Awesome. Great intro. Thanks, Rob. Most people just throw it to me and go, tell us your story real quick, but just put it in a nutshell. It's really hard to do. There's a lot to it. There's 20 years of evidence, of story. And that's why getting the book out, my first book, Series Colony Cavalier, getting that out has been a big help because I can just, rather than explain it all front to back, every interview, I can say, that there's the book. I am
Can
working on the second book.
let's go ahead and say the book slowly. It's available on Amazon or your website. You have a
Yes.
story. It has to get out there. Unfortunately, books aren't free yet.
Yeah, and it's not a love and light thing. It's a very dark book. So I would caution anybody going into it that I was greatly abused in my time. I was taken, and it was kind of a negative experience. Not all of it. So that it doesn't end. I don't think it ends on a sour note. I think, it's not just a train wreck of a book. It's called Ceres Colony Cavalier, and it's the Planetoid series, spelled Ceres. You can get on Amazon. I've got great reviews on there. It was a bestseller the first 6 weeks, I think it was out. But you can get it off my website, TonyRodrigues.com. There's a link to that and to my Patreon show and other free interviews I've done. I just want to say that a lot of since then, since Robinson, you and I were really in the beginning when I got my memories, and I guess that 2016 conference where I went to Mount Shasta for the first time. I've always, people come up and question you, right? So this is it's a tall claim. And so it's absolutely natural for people to question me and say, well, show me proof. And I'm always reproving it to myself too, because it's difficult to remember the things that I do. And so I've constantly been researching it. And just recently, only a month ago, I had a guy go, so you remember the plane. So I was abducted, taken into a black program. They put me in an MK Ultra style trauma-based mind control, and they were using this for like a form of remote viewing. And what it ended up at the end of that program is I was a 10-year-old kid, and they would give me an IV and drugs, and I would go near death, and I could channel information. Other people spoke through me, and they were getting information. They were putting me, then they flew me to Peru, to a town in Peru, and I was on flights. It was cocaine paste. It was like pre-cocaine that they were having an airplane load flown from there to Santa Marta, Colombia. And so they lost one of the planes. One of the planes crashed. And so they paid to have me on there, and they would put me in a near death state. And then I was a canary in the coal mine. I would warn them if something bad was going to happen. So I called this out. So you remember?
Yeah, I
Yes.
do remember. This is great. Did you tell them where the down plane was?
No, no. So I didn't know. They never found that. It was before I got there.
Okay.
But the guy, so I called this out. I think it was in 15. It was 15 or 16. I went on the record with this. I still have the emails. But the guy that was kind of my handler in the town, spoke English, but he was a young guy in his early 20s, and he really saw himself as a like a revolutionary. Che had been in the area in the 70s, Che Guerrero. So he had been through that area, and they were proud. They were like considered themselves. So the plane was called a Commando. It was a cargo plane, a C-46, a Curtiss C-46 Commando. And I always remembered the name of it, and the front, has a unique front window, because they let me as a boy, they let me crawl up there and look out the window on one occasion. And these are very clear memories to me. So I went on record and I said it's the C-46 Commando. And through the years in 2017 and 18, I would call up the list of all the Curtiss C-46 Commandos, thinking there's got to be a record of this plane somewhere. And it's got to turn up. There's got to be something, and nothing. And it turns out it's a rare plane. There's only, I don't know, 500 or 1,000 of them in service, in the early 2000s. But recently I did an interview for a Latino channel, and researchers down there in Peru, one guy was in the Peruvian Air Force. We all did a Zoom call, and they were Spanish speakers, so I couldn't understand. And I had somebody
I saw
translating.
that.
Yeah, you? Oh, I had somebody translating, and I said, well, do you know anything about a C-46 Commando? And the one guy was in the Peruvian Air Force. He said, oh yeah, C-46, that's in from Puerto Maldonado. And I said, well, it was Puerto Tawantinsuyo. He said, yeah, but they were keeping it in Puerto Maldonado, and it was seized by the narcos in 1990 in a raid. And lo and behold, I found the plane. It's in Pucallpa, and you can find it on Google Earth. It's a rare plane. So this is another thing that I called out of sheer memory from what happened.
I
And
know.
I can prove that I've never been to Peru. So, it's a very, and this was only a few weeks ago that this happened. I had somebody fly down there and get pictures, and we're kind of in the working on the numbers.
Okay, we're going to call that the final hammer on the nail of evidence. Don't doubt Tony, or if you do, I mean, just keep it to yourself. But let's go into Tony's experiences are real, and they're not fun to remember. Let them be a warning. But Tony's experiences also have opened up. I know it has a spiritual side, a metaphysical side, and I'd like to talk about in your inner process as much as you want to share. Um, why don't you talk about any new realizations and what you're coming to see first for yourself and memories a little bit, and then I have a second part to that question. So, do you have anything new in your feelings that have helped you unpack your bags and get a deeper perspective?
Absolutely. I think I'm always going through it, and I'm always kind of looking back on why did it happen to me? And I at this age, I'm in my 50s now. I realize that I've been very different from everybody else my whole life, and I couldn't put my thumb on it until I got my memories back. So there's a spirituality there. My second book touches on it. I think I was in touch with a lot of things when they were putting me under that I was experiencing. So that state of mind is almost near death, was almost like an out of body near death experience on a monthly basis for a few years in Peru. So there's a lot of what happened with that in my next book that's coming out, Project Star Maker. And that fills in, those memories come from another 10 years on series that I was basically, my consciousness was sold off and used for a different project. There's a lot going on, Rob. And the other thing that I've been working on is, I remembered how some of the things they taught me when I was in space happened. And I've been working on a project for this creating software. So a new form of learning that really we don't have yet. We have a very old learning system, and put together a company, and people are investing in me, and I'm working with software guys and with content creators, and we're building an adaptive decision-based learning program. Right now we're working for preschoolers, but that's kind of where this led me. So I had memories of the system they plugged me into on Mars to learn how to be ship maintenance on a UFO, on one of these ships. And I remember how the software worked. I think I bit off enough of it to where it's going to really work. It's very promising. People that are not really into my story, people that are in the business world that see this, look at it and go,
They
wow.
like this. That's cool.
Yeah, they're like, wow, where'd you get this idea? And I don't tell them, it was I was on Mars the last time I saw this work. So it's a kind of like, I don't want to say stealing, but yeah, I've brought back a little piece of the technology with me, and I'm working very hard on it and hoping to release the preschool version sometime early next year.
In Raymond Keller's book, Lady Columba Venus Revelations, from her 4 years on the moon base and on Venus back in the late 50s and 60s, she's the one that handed him the book that he's edited. She said that they do a learning like Pat Flanagan did. It's a neurophone. It's the kind of thing that allows deaf people to hear by vibrating the bone, kind of going around. So they do a very soft, inaudible to the conscious mind informational download in the evening, and they assimilate and they wake up. And I saw it actually done by Pat Flanagan. He demonstrated it on Tom Brokaw way back. I'm talking Tom Brokaw, folks. You youngsters won't know about him.
Yeah, I remember Tom Brokaw.
He was a big guy, and Pat. So he said, "I'm going to put it in there, and we're gonna program one word in there." And I forget what it was. I want to say it was a foreign language word to make it more difficult. And I don't know, I don't want to arouse political tensions, but I think maybe it was like in Russian. And so Pat Flanagan says, okay, let's see what your first response is to this word. And he said, "Schnack,
Oh,
and
wow.
whatever it was, it may have been Greece, it may have been Spanish, I don't even remember. But he said, flowers. So there you go. So if I think that is something different than what you're doing. You are doing
It is
to allow the child to open up. That's wonderful.
So it's based on, if you think about when you use your maps to drive to a place, to an address, you put in the address and the map tells you every turn. You don't pay attention really to where you are, and then you get there, and if you don't have the maps, you can't drive there again. But if somebody gives you directions on a piece of paper like we did in the old days, you would drive there and they'd say, go up to the street. You'd have to look for the street and make the decision to turn. Then you'd go to you go up, there's a gas station, and then you make a left. And all you had to do was that one time, and then you always could find your way back to that house. Do you understand
Yeah.
the I think a lot of us older guys that we haven't had, we didn't have maps when we were young and driving. So the kids nowadays don't really know what we're talking about. But this is kind of the same thing. So when you make a decision about something that a piece of information that's been presented and you use an operating decision, it sticks. It just sticks. It's just our psychology. That coupled with there's a few other tricks in the software, and there's a few other things. I got offered very early to get bought out on it. I really, right out of the gate, I got offered to be a pretty wealthy man, and I said no, because it's also a dangerous software. It's a dangerous thing, and you can ruin people's lives with this. But there's another component of it, that is some people can read really quick and they'd rather not watch a video. And some people can watch a video, they'd rather not read. And so the software will determine where your strong suits are
There's
and
three different types.
throttle.
There's three different types of learning in the neuro-linguistic programming, stuff like that. And that's kinesthetic. You do it, you see it, or you hear it.
Right.
So
there's text, and then text and audio, then text and audio and animation, then movie. So there's all these different media types. This is why that's why I can talk about it without it being finished, is because I don't care if somebody takes the idea. It's very labor intensive to generate the content, because for each point, imagine a school book, for every paragraph, we're generating 8 and maybe 10 pieces of media to explain that one paragraph. But what that lets us do is, when a child gets it, they can breeze right through to the next one. And when a child struggles, the software will adapt. Rather than calling the teacher or mom at a homeschool situation, the software will adapt and say, wait a minute, we see you're struggling. Have a look at this.
Is that for following eye movements or in the responses?
That's why we're in the preschool level. So later on, when we get into like higher like college level or later high school level, we will include eye tracking just for speed. That's, I think I'm new to the software world, and I was shocked by how much software has eye tracking.
They're going up
facial
now.
recognition.
They're moving. No, that's their. It's all good. They can't use it against you. They can follow you and know everything you've done. Absolutely. But what are you doing? None of us are really. We're not fighting revolution or anything. We're doing
it points to the direction that they are way more advanced than they'd like to let us know. Like with AI, with what they can do, they can see where you're engaging on the screen. They can see your faces. They flash you something, and facial recognition is far more advanced than they'd have us believe. And it's the flavor of the month. It's in all the software now. But my software isn't going to rely on that in the early stages. We may do that. And then the other thing, like I said, why I didn't sell it is because I want to have it something that's consensual. I don't want them to be another learning software. China they're talking about their AI software for kids. It just came out. Videos are all over Instagram and everything. And people sent this, is this going to obsolete your software, Tony? And I said, no, because all it is it's 99% surveillance to see that the kid's engaged, and he's going to get a timer to get back to work, is really all that. That's the limit. And then they learn, they're seeing the AI is benchmarking where their kids are. The Chinese school system is based around memorization. This software is based around making decisions, learning for yourself. So it strengthens the innovative part of your brain, baked in while you're learning, while you are memorizing. So like I said, they weren't using the Chinese version on Mars. They were using this.
Right. I think that all that technology, everything is really good. And I really hope that this good learning tool can get out to the public. I wanted to go now. So remember that thing that you've actually turned into a very good possible learning tool for kids. That's a great step forward, and congratulations on that. You're coming out with a new book, Star Maker. And I want to, can you share from the times that I knew, that was years ago, what other memories that filling out some of the details, and if you think they're important in your life or led you to some realizations, maybe share one or two, but if not.
I mean, it's off the top of my head. Really, what I remembered when I met you first, Rob, when I had my recall event, I remembered all the real highs and lows. I remembered the real emotional things. And we met up. I was living on Maui at the time. I'm in Michigan now, and you were just got to Maui. We went and had lunch, and we met for lunch a few times. It was great. And I remember telling you, you were like, tell me from the beginning. And it was like one, bad thing after another, because those were the early clear memories.
Yeah.
Right. And some of the good things. Since then, the memories that filled in are kind of like the day in and day out, and the less emotional events, like what I was doing, how my job was going. Somebody asked me in an interview, a year later after I'd been to Shasta, so said, well, how did you brush your teeth? Skeptics, how did you brush your teeth? Where did you go to the bathroom? What was the shower? Who cut your hair? What was that all about? And I thought, man, I need to know this. If this is real, these are real memories. And I exercised on it. I did, I developed, I was pouring rosemary oil, because they say rosemary oil, essential oil, will help. The smell of it helps you. I was doing that. I was researching, like, how do I get these memories? I know I brushed my teeth. How did that happen? And I stumbled upon like a routine, like an exercise. It turns out, we all use our short-term memory a lot. It's a strong part of it's if you think about it as a muscle, it's strong. Our long-term memory is kind of weak. We don't use it that often. We just don't. And so I got made an exercise for it, and that's what I have on my website too. Is a memory course. But what happened was I started doing that. In the mornings, I found that if I meditated for a minute and then went into the memory, like, okay, now I'm because I always remembered the alarm going off in the barracks and waking up, and it's like, what did I do next? And I would slow it, and then I went, oh wow, they were disposable toothbrushes, and we all lined up to go to the shower, and I remembered that. And then when you came back, when you checked in or out from the barracks where I was, there were two girls at the window that you had to check out, and they would say once in a while, oh, he needs a haircut, go see the barber. And you would check in, they would write you in, and you'd go straight to the barber, and there was a barber shop, and a guy would cut your hair. It was not high tech.
Hey, you know
This
what?
art on the back and
Okay.
behind me is a artist rendition, is one of the AI programs of Series. That's kind of what it looked like.
Hey, okay, that's what I wanted you to talk about was life on Sirius. I don't want to hear about, the toothpaste is good memory for you personally, but I'm looking for more like the interactions. I remember you told me about a brothel and some ETs doing some stuff. You don't have to talk about that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But
there was a red light district. Yeah.
yeah, well, you don't have to, we don't have to go into that, but anything else about the interaction and the slave versus the tiered level that was going on at that time?
I've been accused of Stockholm syndrome because say they were their own closed society. They were their own, closed society. These are people that, however, by whatever means, got off the earth and were given an area on Ceres, an abandoned base that was already existing, and began to build in. And they were from Europe, and so they began to manufacture European type buildings, and a World War II era, prior to World War II era culture, and then introduced technology. So they're not the same. It's just a culture. So I don't like to demonize them and say that they were totally evil or bad guys or something. They were just mistaken. They don't have the same standard of human rights that we do, that we think we do.
Entitlement, ethics. I mean, all these things are at the heart and the core of all this. And that's another thing. And thank you for sharing that. I think that's a good one. I think one of the things I wanted to talk about was there are a lot of revelations, folks. The secret space program, folks, I coined that term in 2011. It was on a website. So I'm not
Thank God for you, because
I think I did. I mean, maybe other people called
it's a hot topic. Yeah.
When I was given that those photographic evidence, that's what I did. So I kind of showed the hardware. A lot of people have known, and I don't even know exactly all the technology that was on there. I've asked questions and they've responded. So this space program going on in the outer space, and Tony went to this mining colony, right? Okay, so now I want to hear Tell us about the social life and the various races you met. Maybe give us people a little kind of Star Trek true. Tony gets off from whatever he's doing and take
At
us
the
to the society a broad overview.
at the end of the day, some days we came in. So the ship very often made a temporal mission where it would we would go out and we'd work for 7 or 8 hours and do trade missions throughout the galaxy to other star systems. And we would come back the same instant we left. We didn't come back 8 hours later. And so we would go back in, and if I didn't have anything to do, a lot of times we had either classes or like gym, or we'd go back to the barracks and we'd have to clean.
They
But a
were
lot of times, if we
like,
didn't, I was free to roam.
were they going back in time or um
Yes.
I mean, were they delivering supplies to themselves from the future or
No, it was just breaking even. So that was part of one of the safety mechanisms. So the time travel is kind of a big thing in the community, a lot of researchers. My understanding from these missions was that time travel was policed by an extra dimensional or by a being, by very powerful beings that were outside of time space, that they policed it. And that's why there's not huge temporal, people that have time travel don't just take over every bit of creation with that technology because it's very powerful, because it is actually policed from outside of time space. So
yeah,
that was my impression.
that's what I heard through Fred Bell long ago. He said the Andromedans are the the highway patrol of the galaxy in the portals, and they're willing to step in more than the Pleiadians were in the early days. And the mantis beings are the ones that open the portals, and they come from, there's from Sirius as well, one of the highest portals and spiritual locations in our galaxy, and they have in the last information I received from Milan, the security chief of the Venusians. Um, he told me that there's going to be a lot. There's in the future, mankind is going to go there. The Queen actually mentioned it in the message. It is a celestial incubator, and many souls will be taken to Sirius to prepare and to come back and help rebuild the new Earth.
Hmm.
So that's an interesting phenomenon of the portals that were there. Can I ask you, was a city enclosed? Was there a glass dome, or was
Yeah,
everyone?
so series everything was underground. So it was they were not so much trying to hide their existence from people on Earth. They were hiding their existence from other species, ETs that could come through. And so they didn't have anything on the surface. I think there were a few small towers that they had, like observation points that were on the surface of Ceres, but basically everything was inside. And actually, the entrance to the hangar, the military hangar that we went in and out of, was very cleverly placed inside what NASA calls a cold trap. So it was a crater that has most of it in darkness from the sun, 90% of the time. And so they had doors there with like a hologram projected over it that made it, but they were in the dark, just by the way that the wall was oriented to the sun most of the time. There was sometimes when sunlight would get it, but for the most part, you wouldn't. It would be in darkness. So, and then we went in, and the hangar area was kilometers. It was very huge, 19, 20 kilometers big, and full of ships that came from all over the place. There were two other species that lived there full time. One of them was a lot bigger and kind of ran the businesses, the shops. Guys, they had hair. They were big, wide hips, 9 feet tall, probably, and beady eyes and telepathic. And then there were another tall species there that they always had straight, long hair, and
These were like the Ferengi, the businessmen of.
they were. That's exactly right. They were They tended to manage all the shops. There was always one of them in charge of all the shops.
And there were
Um,
ETs
they
selling
were
wares
ETs.
there.
Yeah. So we were told a little about their background, but there's a lot of it I don't remember, to be honest. But they were there when the Europeans got there, when the Deutsch got there. They were there already, and they kind of hammered out a deal.
And so, what are they doing in there? You guys are mining out within the asteroid itself.
But
You're
yeah,
following
so
it out step by step, and you were.
there is a great deal of mining. They're looking for water. and they found technology in pockets of water. It was the urban legend. Like that was classified. They didn't tell us that. So for me to say that, definitely, I don't know. But the
Right.
urban legend between us worker guys was that when they were looking for pockets of water and they'd bring the water out, and then inside they had found ruins, buildings. That was the kind of the legend, what they were doing. They were not mining for any kind of material. They were mining to build new space, because space was at a premium. There was nowhere to put anything. It was crowded. So they were mining big caverns out and then putting European style, human dwellings into them.
Oh,
That
it
was,
was the survival
it was
from.
about space. It was about square footage, not about materials. The
And so, what
I
is it?
always asked,
What is a secret space program used to be doing, or possibly still is doing, um, about that?
well, they had to travel far to go. If they got space on another world and another system, they had to travel there. So on the Ceres colony, in order to build it out, they were trying to build it out. Space, having warehouse facilities, and they were in competition with other colonies in the solar system. So,
So, talking about the Earth secret spacecraft was in competition
yes,
with other colonies to build out
yes.
Sirius.
Well, just to be more advanced, just to advance. So it was about them advancing and having places to put more hardware.
And were they? Uh, what were they doing there? Primarily trading. You guys were.
Trade. So our mission, like the Star Trek mission had to boldly go to seek out new life. That was not our mission. Our mission was to trade for tech. Period. It was to
You were.
trade
You
to
were
advance
simply.
technology.
You were simply a worker facilitating that process.
I ended up my highest ranking job I got was cargo engineer. And I
Okay.
was the last couple of years I was there, I was a cargo engineer on a ship, and I kept track of how much space we had in my cargo bay and how to stack everything. And there were guys that I'd hand off work orders on where to stack things and what to unload.
Hmm.
That was my job towards the end.
I guess
Uh,
let I was thinking maybe taking a different direction. What's going on up there now from what you think and hear and feel? Is that program still going on that level? Is it being dismantled a little bit? JP's information, how far along? I guess that's classified. We wouldn't
I
know.
I love JP's info. I follow him. It's amazing, some of the things. It's to think about what he's going through in his day to day is amazing. Um, there's not a lot of info, live info like from witnesses like that from series coming out. I have started I so on my in my Patreon, I've started a group that we started kind of back engineering the meditation and the program, that what we were doing for manifesting, for bringing good luck to yourself, basically. So we got a group together, and we take somebody and we all vote on it, and we do a synchronized meditation with the focus, with binaurals and with monatomics, other things, with the intention of helping out, well, for one synchronized goal purpose, and it works. And so what that's done is spawned into kind of a remote viewing group, and there's another group of, I don't know, maybe 20 people now, and we're doing remote viewing targets, and we're experimenting with all the protocols, the Farsight one and other ones that we do. And we've looked at things like that, like Ceres and some of the other targets that are kind of coming up into the news in the community. I think Ceres will eventually outgrow the slavery and the human rights situation it's in. I think that the lifestyle there is a lot like what we're seeing them try to put on us now.
Well, I
Um,
mean, the thing is who are these other people?
well,
That's kind
it's
of
a
I mean, that were here forever and they just been trading there forever. And somehow the earth came up and go, give us a place at the table. Right.
yeah. Well, Ceres wasn't really like that. It was kind of given to that, like the humans there were in charge. So like I said, for instance, those guys that you said were like the Ferengi, the shopkeepers. When the police were called and showed up, which were humans, they had complete authority. There was no the ETs didn't tell the police, the humans that came in, and the police, they had authority. They didn't tell them anything to do. So the humans were in charge on Ceres. It was a
So there were
completely a human
galactic
colony.
police came, but they did not interfere.
Just the Ceres police, just the police that were in the colony police, and they had complete authority. The humans had authority there. So what I'm saying is that was a there was a it was a what's the word I'm looking for? Well, it was a surveillance state. Everywhere you went, you were being surveilled. And that was kind of what we're seeing being built around us, especially like I think England's already halfway there, or most of the way there.
As far as using it to control, they can look at people going around all day long. Doesn't matter.
Hmm.
I don't think,
Well,
it's
it gives them a heads up on what people are deficient in their day-to-day life, or what they're indulging in their day-to-day life, and they can provide one thing or the other. Like that's the greatest business tool that ever happened. If you know what if you have everybody's metadata, you know
that's
what's
all that's
bad.
all about money for them. And all that's I don't think that's going to last because the changes are coming. Have you heard about the hydrogen cloud?
No,
Okay, the area in space outside the atmospheres is usually 10,000 degrees. I'm sorry, it's absolute zero, right?
zero. Yeah, or just a little, right.
Right. So um, we are now in a 120-year-long hydrogen cloud. It's 20 years in, and it's 55 million miles of space. This has been talked about since 1972, when I'm postulating here, but I believe Frank Strange has told an astronomer where to look, and he found a cloud of hydrogen, and he predicted it would be very hot. Then I told Alex this information um, when I got it, um, and um, and he said, "Well, He says, "I said you're the solar system seeing up because yeah." I said that 10 years ago, and I go, "Really?" I go, "Wow."
Mhm.
The Venusians had it for like 70 years ago, or seven. Yeah, 50. Oh no, something like 50 years ago. So, and then so we're going through this hydrogen cloud. Now we're going through a cycle of increased solar flares. This
Mhm.
is turbocharging the atmosphere. Our Earth is hotter than Venus, according to the technology they used to say that there was no life on Venus. They were only measuring the electrical outer atmosphere, and it was 1,000 degrees. Ours is 2,000 because of all the radiation that we've released in the atmosphere. That's the number one problem.
Hmm.
Not that fossil fuels and all of these things aren't good for us, nor are chemtrails, but um, I wanted to ask you've heard about and this is where we can take the conversation here because you know different things here. So I'm going to just finish this out. So at the same time, these solar flares are occurring as the solar flares hit the Earth as we revolve. They've told me it's going to interfere with communication systems. They did not say this. I speculate possible EMP that may affect air travel at some point in the future as the solar cloud intensity increases. They indicated that by 2040 to 60, we should be out of the major influence of the solar cloud.
Hmm.
And I believe the solar cloud is an evolutionary leap. As the atmospheres from all of these things get blown away a little bit, we're going to have more cosmic radiation. This is a natural phenomenon that will act as a spark to the DNA change and the challenges that we're going to face geologically and in nature are going to bring us to a strong reminder if we can prepare for this roller coaster ride that we're coming up. They indicate there's an asteroid coming between the moon and the Earth, 400 miles from our atmosphere. That movie Moonfall may have been part of a partial release of some of that. The AI issue, I believe, is not really an issue because that's under control of the good guys ground command. However, they have junior AI that, as you know, can do a lot anyway. But the real AI that can track you and social credit you, that's already been removed.
Well, I think AI, like we're starting to get public versions of AI. That's because they have an extremely advanced one that's in operation already. The Aladdin AI is already quite powerful and probably sentient. Um, So they're sure of what, if we're seeing it publicly, that's because they've already had it for a very long time and have it all, have the kinks worked out. There's another thing we're passing through called the photonic belt. Well, photonic is kind of along the same way, along the same lines, where it's an area, and everybody is in agreement that that's where we are right now, the photonic belt, and it's the same, basically the same thing you're saying.
That's it.
Probably a different name, but that's true. And I know that, they're selling us, saying that it's our cars and the cows and everything, or why that there's global warming, but that's not the case. It's definitely not the carbon. There have been many times in history of the Earth that carbon was much higher and the temperatures were lower.
I want to go into a question for you philosophically for how society is going to change with this realization that there are extraterrestrials here. There are people talking about meeting them, and there's people here to prepare people to raise their vibration and to not do bad and evil things to each other, because that's where it really has to change, is in the personages. And I can tell you that unfortunately I think we're going to see some very, in certain locations, strong earth changes. What do you see for the future, whether that comes or not, for the psychology of people on earth getting used to the ET things, not so much often serious and all that, but the coming transformation in our society?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I recently did a talk and somebody asked me, how do I get the ETs to visit me? That was the question. Like, how do I get them? And I said, well, I mean, there are people and they're going to do what they're going to do. Be somebody worth visiting. You got to understand that a lot of ETs have telepathic ability and they know what's going on in the back of your mind. A lot of people still are accustomed to doing shady things. And so that's not somebody that an extraterrestrial is going to want to visit. As far as society, I think we kind of run the gambit. We're getting a lot of people nowadays. The political programming needs to be dealt with at some point, but we got a lot of people nowadays, the kids coming up have a really good sense about them. They're I think kids always have, though, but have a really good sense about them. And we're starting to see, because of the connectivity of the world, you're starting to see that it's a much bigger world. Like growing up in the 50s and 60s, you had your a lot of people had no idea what was going on in the Micronesia, for instance, or in Hawaii. So it was just what you heard by rumor. But nowadays you can go on there and research the whole world and see that we are very connected. That there's a big illusion for the country, in the United States, that we had it better than everybody. But if you look around the rest of the planet, it's kind of the same lifestyle in a lot of places. And so people are starting to get on the same page, not only consciously but subconsciously about it, and that's really what brings them in. So when we're asleep and we have our subconsciouses, we do a lot of work while we're sleeping. We communicate as a whole, and so we're growing up, and that as a species we are growing up, and it's happened a lot just in the last 20 years, like you said. And you roll the clock forward 20 more years, as long as the powers that be don't blow stuff up and things iron out, we're going to be a much better society, just simply for the one fact that we are super connected now with the technology that we never were before. So we're learning from each other at a much faster pace, and that we're growing up. And in order to have the ETs come down here and visit us, and the Federation and anybody else for that matter, because we're not talking about, it's not a small neighborhood up there. We're talking about, you can instantly portal to any star in the galaxy or to any of several other galaxies, and there's trillions of worlds. So it's not a small neighborhood that anybody can come and visit us. We have to be somewhere that's worth visiting. And we're growing up. People are going there.
I think that's a very, very good point. I want to expound a little bit more on the changes for the average person. Now, people are listening to this are probably more advanced and more open-minded, or they're going to go, "This is nuts." I'm not looking. Sure. No, nothing, honey. Just
yeah.
But what do you see for when you look out in our world, and everyone else could have this own thought too, and speculate this and see what you think, how you might help this along. And it's not about being a true believer or having anyone join any point of view, but to recognizing um, what they have believed in terms of money, in terms of religion, in terms of history. How do you think that um, humanity can move forward through the shock and awe of these entire things? Are we going to evolve into chaos and woe is me, nothing I believed is real? Or can we talk about maybe moving forward? I'm going to be right here listening to every word. I'm just going to be off screen for a little bit. So keep talking and I'll have
Sure.
just a moment. Excuse me.
I think the important thing to do, firstly, I'm a strong believer that we need to take back the experience of our children. So right now, children are kind of up in the air, and people aren't getting um, parenting role models like we used to. That was the media gave you the role model of how to be a parent, and now they're not having that. And so we need to get a grassroots version of that for the kids. That's literally the most important thing, is how you influence the next generation. But I think there was a time when a lot of people in the United States were not ready to hear about the realities of space, so that we are not the top of the food chain, and that there are and some of these technologies. And I think they were slowly getting us ready over time to eventually adapt to the radical tech, not only the high tech realities, but the mental and the spiritual realities of the diversity of space. And I think people are ready now. I think people can handle it. I think if they came down and told us a lot of things that are very hard to swallow, people would figure it out. I don't think anybody's surprised by anything anymore, the way that things have been, especially in the last decade. Um, I think that there are still a lot of people that are very barbaric in society, because we've been programmed to be. And I think what we're seeing in the bungling of the programming from the elites recently is because they're in a hurry to get to a a disclosure event. And they should have been preparing us better all along, but they were using our division against us. So we really are seeing things, I guess, move forward in that way aspect. People are starting to wake up like never before and realize that how much of the media programming is out there, and finding the truth, like normal people. And so when my story came out in 2016, Rob, when I went public with my account of what happened to me, I heard it from family members, my wife's family. A lot of them are they're like, Tony's not a liar. I like Tony, but I don't believe that stuff. So a lot of people were not believing it, but now, here we are, and the most staunch people, the normies that are fully invested in the official system, now they're seeing UAPs being confirmed. They're seeing all this weirdness. And I've had a few people come back to me and say, Tony, I didn't believe you before, but you got to explain this stuff to me a little better. And so that's the step in the right direction. That's the step in the direction that we're going. We need to understand that they've programmed us to not live the life that we would organically. So every kid is born already with the ability to manifest the life that it wants, and to be a genius and be creative. And they stomp that out of you at a very young age. Creativity is what the elites have taken away. So we need to get back to that. So creativity and having confidence and saying, I deserve what I'm going to create is going to come true. And I deserve my life to do it. Kids are lucky. How many times you see a kid walk up to a machine and pull the trigger and they win, and you go, how'd they do that? Because they believe that they're worth it. They don't, because they haven't had society tell them that they're not worth it.
That new type of thinking that you're talking about, I think, is the right direction. On Venus, when they stepped away from their tyrannical system, they came that close that everyone just walked out of the city. They called it the beginning, and they stopped that financial greed and that accumulation system of control and power, and they went out and created self-sustainable communities. I think that now is the time people should be able to see. And unfortunately, with the money problem, the way people look at it, but for people to step away and create entire communities that are completely sovereign, they can do whatever they want if they can get together. Not so much control of laws and ordinances. And then if these people are open and they're in a harmonious space, I think contact can take place. I think it can happen right in Mount Shasta or any other city. The larger cities are going to be much more difficult, I think, for contact and the chaos. Um, if certain problems happen, people will revolt. They're not going to get away with anything they're planning. There's no way. People will revolt. There's nothing. I don't think the military is going to fire on their families. I think that there's some mind control guys, but I think we have galactic help in terms of ground command. And
I would agree. I think that this isn't the first rodeo. This isn't the first. We're not the first species to make it to this.
Yeah.
Right. So they knew exactly what the internet was going to do when they introduced the internet. ETs, with
the good ones,
the good ones and the bad ones. And well, I don't believe in really good or bad, but people are people. Like, depending on who you are in the world.
That's right. It's a relative perspective,
right. But they knew what the car was going to do when the car was introduced. They knew what the automobile, they knew what the television was going to do. They knew what the internet was going to do. We're not the first planet this has happened on, and they know exactly what's going to happen next. Other planets have gone through this. It happens probably all the time in the cosmos, where we go from believing that we're the only ones and that we're the top of the food chain to finding out that the food chain is almost endless, and that there's a greater reality that and I love this saying that nature extends beyond the sky. It's like, it's a forest. People always say, well, what's it like in space? Is it all good guys or all bad guys? And I say, no, it's like a forest. You can walk into a forest and you can see a fuzzy happy thing, or or a cat can jump out and want to bite you. That's what space is like. So it's just nature. It's not necessarily, like I said, I just so many people want to say good and evil. They want to say that this guy's bad and this guy's good, and it's not. It's more complex than
that's
that.
Right. And I know that they call them the omegas. They just want what they want because they can get it, and they don't have any regard for anyone else. They're not particularly emotionally attached to killing you, but if you're in the way, you are, they're don't have respect for life. So this is, especially but you look at humans, we still are killing animals for food.
The animals, yes.
Eventually that will probably change as different things are understood, but it's not a big point. It's about growth, and I don't say baby steps, but a broad open mind to take a great leap forward. I think what you said about children is good. I was thinking more about
to me, that's a one size fits all approach. So kids, I think that when you take big pie slices of a city and you see the kids that grow, or the young adults, or the adults that are having a hard time, that are victimized people and do bad things, it goes back to parenting. It goes back to their early formative years, where they weren't fortunate to have both parents, or they weren't fortunate to have parents. Parents are drug addicted, people are drug addicted, they go through a rough time, they don't have money, and they have a kid, and so the child gets a bumpy upbringing, or the wrong role model.
I think it's a culture. I think we don't have a culture here anymore. It is a woman's body. I do have problems with abortion, because we can always give the child up for adoption, and we have to take more responsibility. Both male and female have to be absolutely secure and safe, and
a lot of
more responsibility of the sacredness of that, even if it's a casual one, but a responsible attitude. I think there's so many things that are going to be a challenge for humanity that I think that this conversation today has really prepared people. And I think I want to thank you for sharing some of your little memories of the minutia of your day to day life, and to sharing us the affirmation that there is life out in the universe abundantly, and that when you were there, depending whatever the situation, there's a trade location in the asteroid Sirius, and that I think the opportunities as we become a spacefaring focused society, once we realize that, then everyone comes together and all the sciences and everything flourish because everyone's working toward a common goal, which is
I
to
want to say one. I'd like to say one thing.
yeah.
It dawned on me. I was asked, what technology do you remember from up there? And people were saying, they wanted anti-grav and they wanted free energy. And I said, I wasn't technically minded enough to know that. But the learning software, like I said, is something that I thought I could present how it works and somebody would run with the idea. And what I realized is that we just have to do it myself. I'm just going to do it myself. And I think everybody is like that. I think all of us, anybody listening to this is, no one's going to take your good idea and run with it, or your good thing and run with it. You have to do it yourself. Yeah. At some point you have to make up your mind. And we just, instead of saying, I'm waiting for the ETs to come down and give us a better world, to just say, no, I'm just going to make a better world right now. I say, this is my new catchphrase. I'm saying is, don't worry about the volcano. It may or may not go off. Worry about your yard. People think that because there's a volcano, say, well, I don't need to mow my lawn because the volcano will go off tomorrow. You don't know that. We don't know what's going to happen on the macro event, the governmental things, the giant tectonic things that are going on. We don't know, but just take care of your own yard and do it yourself. Just get out there and start making it a better place yourself. The ETs would love to visit a society that did that as a whole.
I agree completely. I definitely think we need to work together in that way and have like-minded visions. The new Earth consciousness is universal consciousness. It exists in spirit, and it's an allegiance to, the virtues and honesty, and to non-harm, and to being peaceful and supporting each other. And I'm I'm reading a book now about 500 people from Earth that were taken, three from about 100, 3 to 5 from every country, um, and went to this planet for 6 months. And they got to go to other worlds and visit, and day to day, their information and how they live, and that they're 10,000 years in advance of us. And the lifestyle is so relaxed and so joyful that it can act as a carrot for us if we could get to this paradise state. Tony has been on the other side of that extraterrestrial technology, and yet he's spoken in his imagination here about the positive things. So I'd like to thank you for coming on the show again, Tony. It's been a long time, and I appreciate sharing your information with my people. And what do you got coming up? Whenever this thing drops, you got the new book coming out.
The new book is going to come out soon.
Could you spell your name for them on the website too?
Absolutely. The website is Tony Rodrigues, all one word, TonyRodrigues.com. And that has a link to Series Colony Cavalier. It will have a link to my next book. We just finished actually the full draft of it yesterday. It's just in editing right now, and it'll get uploaded. It's going to be a couple weeks, and it'll be available, and it'll also be on the website. It's called Project Star Maker, and it's kind of a companion and a more spiritual side, of what happened to me. So where Series Colony Cavalier is dark, this is less. I have my Talks with Tony on Patreon, and there's a link to that off my website, and that's an ongoing show. There are tiers on there. The remote view, we're learning remote viewing. Anybody can join. There's a monthly fee for that, because these are live talks where it's like a big Zoom, and we go over. We have targets. It's amazingly accurate. And the tier 3, which is only it only allows so many people in tier 3, but those are available. And then I have a show. I put out a couple shows a month, and it's going good. So I put Patreon for the paywall because I was getting deleted there for a while, and because to just sidestep some of the drama. So that's what I've been working on. And then the learning software company is called Maple Street Learning Incorporated, and like I said, we're working hard on that. A lot of people hear about it and they contact me, educators want to help out. A little early, I'm looking for graphic artists and graphic animators right now. But that's going to happen, and I will definitely be presenting on that. And I'll hit you up. I'd love to come back when the company launches and we start going into the later stages of that. I'd love to come back on the show, Rob,
Yeah,
and present on that because I'm very hopeful for it. Like I said, changing the culture around children is how we change the world in the future. It's the kids, the responsibility. You can't change the politician. You got to grow a better politician. That's where we're at.
that's a great note. Thank you so much, folks. Rob Potter, thepromiserevealed.net. Victory to the light. Don't forget the Mount Shasta Summer Conference. I'm not sure when this is going to get out there, but we're June 22nd through 25th in Mount Shasta, California. Thank you so much. All right. God bless y'all. And we'll stop recording on the computer.